What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by none other than Jimmy Watkins, columnist, cleveland.com. Jimmy, how are you doing today? How has your day been?
It's been good. Hanging out with Jim Schwartz, Ken Dorsey, and the boys over at the Browns facility this morning. Hanging out with you. Nothing but heavy hitters, Cleveland heavy hitters on my schedule today.
Man, I'm still trying to get known. We were talking about getting more people on this podcast. I was like, well, maybe if they see me come back to the Cavs facility for year 2 of mine on the beat, they'll be like, oh, he wasn't just an intern. He might be sticking around for a little bit. I mentioned to Jimmy off the pod that guys like Campy Russell and Austin Carr have come up to me and been like, oh, yeah. I know of you, but it's good to put name to face and all those good things. But yeah, Jimmy, it's just trying to grow, right? Continuing to build these platforms and all these guys, and getting to know the people around the world, around the league, especially NFL, NBA, MLB. Obviously, you're doing a great job of that, being at training camp now in the regular season, in those scrums, getting those faces to be seen. But how important do you think that is just for us to continue to get our feet wet, not only for any beat, but just trying to figure out where we stand in this lay of the land of journalism?
I mean, you always got to have boots on the ground. You always have to be – you never – just for two reasons, right? You never know when a story is going to happen. You never know when someone's going to say something newsworthy or – crazy. You always want to be around because you never know where there's going to be a story. You also sometimes, for my purposes in particular, I think about it as like days like Sunday where the Browns looked awful and I had to grill some folks and write some hard things about them. You have to build up credibility to do that, and the only way you can do that is sticking around.
For sure. And speaking of guys like Campy Russell, Austin Carr, guys that were always going to be Cleveland legend, Cavs legends, but also understanding their new roles and how they kind of are in the TV business now and how that world is continually changing. Recently, there came out was a report that Amazon could be nearing a new deal to stream Cavs and Guardians games, Jimmy. And the potential deal comes as Diamond Sports Group, the parent company of Bally Sports, obviously attempts to emerge from bankruptcy, with Amazon stepping in to potentially offer fans a streaming option for $20 a month. And I know there's a lot of things behind the scenes going on with this entire deal, like how apparently DSG and Amazon had come to a deal earlier this year. Amazon pulled out. It was supposed to be like a $115 million deal or whatever. That obviously doesn't help when it comes to gaining credibility, gaining partners and things, but apparently it's not going to hurt this next deal that's potentially coming. But more so, other than the jargon that we've been speaking of, it's how the lay of journalism and also just streaming sports games digitally on your TV, whatever it was, has changed over the years, Jimmy. And that's more so what I want to talk about on today's podcast, because it really does feel like there was a time where a young Ethan and a young Jimmy could wake up, go downstairs before school, middle school, high school, maybe even elementary school, and go and watch Sports Center, where they got Stuart Scott on listing off the top 10 plays, and you're sitting on the couch, standing up probably with your backpack on, ready to go to school, and you're just wiring, trying to see if you're going to get to see what the top play was from the night before your bus comes or whatever. And now it's like, okay, well, you can't watch this game unless you have Peacock, Amazon, TNT, NBA TV, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's YouTube TV, and sometimes YouTube TV blacks out some games. So, we're going to get into some of the responses that I got from subtexters on this. But Jimmy, how do you feel like this whole world of just watching our beloved sports has changed over the years.
Yeah, I'm no expert on media contracts, but I know a thing or two about being a couch potato and watching some games. And it does feel like, I remember, to your point about young Ethan and young Jimmy. I remember, I'd have friends over after school or something, and I'd like sneak into the living room and plug my, I don't know if it was a GameCube or PlayStation, whatever, into the TV, and you have to like change the input on it for that to work. My dad would get so mad at me because he didn't know how to change it back. Now those two things are one and the same, man. Like you need your, whether it's a PlayStation or something like a smart TV, something that can put apps on it. You need that as much as you need cable to watch all this stuff. Um, I think we lose in general as the consumers because we're paying for more things. We used to have a one-stop shop with the cable package. Now it's splitting off, and I think there's a parallel here between what's happening in TV industry and what's happened with newspapers, which is that it used to be with newspapers, um, no matter what part of the newspaper you were getting, you were paying for the whole thing. Same thing with TV, right? Like ESPN, some of these big time cable titans have made a lot of their money by just having like the cable bundle packages, right? Like people who want to watch. I don't know if this is how it actually works. People who want to watch, HGN, the Home Improvement Network, and A&E, and some of those other channels, you don't get to pick one by one. You have to pick groups of them. So even non-sports fans were getting ESPN on their televisions. Now everything is so segmented and it's so made for consumer, um, that I think a lot of these sports entities are rethinking, much like the journalism industry. It's kind of like a pay for play in the print world. Like you subscribe to read our stuff, to read the premium stuff, and we're seeing professional sports leagues, tiptoe into that world, and now we're seeing it with the regional sports networks. The Chiefs and Dolphins playoff game last year, that's pay for play. You gotta pay or at least sign up for Peacock to watch that game. Ohio State, I think, had a Peacock football game last year. It's like everything else, it does come back down to money, and I think it's especially unfortunate for people around here because we're talking Cavs. I think basketball's like baseball, might be losing a little steam in national prominence, but the regional passion is as strong as it's ever been. Like I don't think people care as much about watching all of the national television games as they care. Can I just see my Cavs? And now all this stuff, all this disruption and change is even impacting us on that local of a level. So it's kind of a bummer.
And to your point, I want to point out so it's very clear, right? Like this new deal would only really affect the next season for both Guardians and Cavs. So the 2024-2025 season is still going to be aired on Bally as of right now. As of what day is it? Thursday at 4 o'clock. That is what the deal is going forward for the Cavs, at least for this next season. And then the Guardians obviously are in season, about to get into a playoff run, and they're still going to be streamed on Valley as well until next year when they said, and this is comment from our guy Paul Hoynes with cleveland.com talking to the Guardians, is that they don't know. It's uncertain what is it going to be with Bally or Amazon or whatever because their contract ends at the end of the season. So that's where this kind of comes in, is what's going to happen in the future. How quickly is this going to change? Because we know that there are other teams around the league that already are getting streaming rights with Amazon, right? And I think this next deal is going to be it could be for around 27 teams, I believe. Or, yeah, it's 27 teams across the NBA, NHL, and MLB. And, I mean, it could bring Cleveland sports fans a more reliable streaming platform with Amazon, because what I've heard from our subtexters, and I'm going to get into this now because you talk about the regional stuff, we know how much Clevelanders love their Brownies, love the Guardians, love the Cavs, right? This is a big sports town. And being able to have a reliable source to watch the game is as important as being able to figure out where to get tickets, right, Jimmy? That's why we write the stories every week, trying to help guys out, help people out, figure out where they can get tickets for these games. But now it's like, all right, are we going to be watching on Amazon? Are we going to be watching wherever, right? So I asked our subtexters, I said, which platform would you prefer to watch the games on? And I wanted them to give their experiences and things of that nature as well. So I sent a poll out, and 77% of the people said that they would rather watch Cavs and Guardians games on Amazon, and even if the $20 a month isn't stated. And then 23% said Bally Sports. Still trying to figure out. Probably it's still going to be like a $20 on top of cable, just like you do for any other streaming platform that you have currently, right? Like Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Max, whatever you want to call it. Like that, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be like Amazon Prime. So you get that, and you'll have it on top of whatever your cable bill is. And that's why we're talking about how important it is to know where the streaming life is going to go over the next years, and especially what it used to be. I mean, for me personally, this last season, my first year covering the Cavs, I have a Roku TV, right? So I don't have cable. I don't have any of that. And I had to learn very quickly that any away game, I had to go to my local bar to watch, because they had Bally Sports, and I wasn't getting Bally. I didn't have that on my TV at the time, and I didn't feel like doing that when I had shout out to Flatiron Irish Pub down the street from me, because that's where I would be watching the away games when Chris was away or at watching the games. So it was hard for me to figure out where I was going to be at each day, because sometimes, your regular bar is closed on Mondays or closes at 10, and the game starts at 9:30, and you got to find another place to be at, right? So as a reporter, I can relate to what these consumers, these people that are trying to regularly watch, these fans, are trying to watch their team just for the fun of it. I'm trying to do work at the same time, lugging my laptop around, trying to figure out where the best spot is going to be, Jimmy. So here is what some of our subtexters said, and you can stop me if you want to comment on these things. And I want to start with the ones that are just kind of rants, because one of them says blatantly, Amazon, Bally Sports is way too buggy and unreliable, not to mention overpriced. I love the Cavs broadcast team, but Bally itself is a nightmare. Remember when their broadcast feed went completely dark during the Cavs' great win in Madison Square Garden, down 2 starters last year? I mean, I remember the bar I was at going nuts, right? Like, what is going on? Change the channel. We're missing the game, right? Like this is crazy, right? For that to happen. The other thing, because I mentioned Campy Russell, Austin Carr, those guys. I don't know what would happen to their roles if Amazon were to take over this contract in the coming years, because we know that they're obviously a part of that team, that broadcast team, and there's Bally Sports teams all across the nation. It's not just Cleveland, but like Bally Sports or whatever. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how all these other jobs are going to just disperse, depending on what happens.
Real quick, I would guess that Amazon doesn't want to fool around with hiring a bunch of up to 60 new broadcast teams. I would hope that they would have some empathy for the people that are already doing, and respect for the people who have already been doing this for so long, that they would want those jobs to transfer over. I don't know that, but that seems like the easiest solution to me.
That's probably smart. Yeah, just adding them back in, give them a role just with Amazon instead of like you get an Amazon mic instead of a Bally Sports mic, right? Like yeah, that would make
Yeah,
the
because
most
like
sense.
what happens to Bally if they lose these games? What is Bally Sports without the games? That's what I'm.
That's
Was
I think we're all trying to figure that
yeah.
out at the same time. I mean, it's up for grabs, up in the air. And I mean, the other thing is like I mentioned earlier, like Campy and Austin Carr aren't just like Joe Schmoes like off the street. Like these are Cavs legends. Like and we talk about rapport and guys knowing the team. Like they have connections that nobody else does because they've been around for a long time. They have the respect of the organization and they've been there, done that. They can just talk to players how they need to get what the information to give it to the fans. I think that's as much as seeing former players be taking a lot of journalism jobs sometimes can hurt my heart. It's like, well, it makes a lot of sense because they have different relationships than we can have with them.
Austin Carr is also just an institution, man. Like I have a picture from my ninth birthday of me and Austin Carr at like some local video game store that he was at that just happened to be at that day. Like it's just cool. It's cool to keep the connections to franchise traditions alive that way.
I'm gonna keep reading some of these responses to our subtext based on whether they would want to watch it on Amazon or DSG, Bally Sports, whatever. The next one is as an Amazon hater, literally anything is better than DSG. My in laws moved to YouTube TV, and there's basically zero way for them to watch the Guardians in market. I got them Fubo for the rest of the season at $100 a month. That would be cheaper than the alleged price for Amazon at $20. So kudos to you for being a good person for getting your in-laws that. But good Lord, man, $100 a month is crazy. The next one, I think this is from our guy Dave in Tucson, because I think that's the only guy we know on this platform from Tucson. He says, being in Tucson, sign me up for $20 a month. You would not take my money fast enough, especially if the Suns can't black me out, even though I am not in their metropolitan area, and an hour and a half of sand separates me from their arena. Tons of Cleveland fans down here from all the years at High Corbett Field for Guardians spring training. So that I mean that's a very valid point, right? There's fans all over the world for Cavs that sometimes can't watch the game because they can only watch the team in state.
Can we just there's a theme here. I think we're regardless of what brand you want to put on it, we're just looking for reliability here. We're looking for streaming reliability. Live sports are basically the only thing in the modern culture that you either watch it when it happens or you don't or you miss it, right? We're kind of out of the era of taping games on your VCR and watching them back unless you're a sicko. Like most people are either watching the games or they're watching the YouTube highlights. That's basically how it works. And it's almost impossible to, even if you were to try to do that, it's almost impossible to watch a game without knowing the score, especially with all the alerts we have set up on our phones and stuff like that. So reliability that you like, I'm going to be able to see the game when I need to, and it's going to stream there through in its entirety, uninterrupted, no buffering or anything like that. I mean, that could partially be related to I stream a lot of stuff at my house. My internet isn't the best, and I get frustrated when I have to stream things sometimes. But I guess that's the day and age we live in. The other thing I think wherever we whichever direction we choose here, I think we would also all be looking for sustainability. Like I don't want to have to be pivoting around to different streaming services once every 3, 5, 10 years. You know what I mean? Like I want familiarity. I don't want to have to be tracking streaming tracking streaming services seasonally and adjusting my budget because okay, we're out of season now, or the Cavs were on Amazon last year and now we're doing the Bally Sports Plus thing. Like, can we just pick a direction and stick with it? I think that's the other thing that we're all looking for here.
I'm glad we got your perspective, Jimmy, because obviously you aren't at every Cavs home game either, because you got a whole lot to do on your plate. So sometimes even when the games are at home, you got to be watching it from the crib, right? And I think that's like just a perspective that you like. that's what the fans are trying to deal with. And I think those two things, reliability and sustainability, are definitely two of the biggest things that I saw in the replies from our subtexters. But how is this going to continue changing, right? Because you mentioned VCRs, right? There is an era, there's a generation that's not going to know what a VCR is. And that's coming up pretty soon. So, like, I know kids that are growing up now that might not know what a
Oh, we're
VCR
already
is.
there. We're already there. DVR, even DVRing a game is like kind of outdated at this point.
Bro, I remember having the Rugrats little like
TiVo. Remember TiVo?
TiVo. Oh my
I thought when I had an uncle that had a TiVo, I was like, man, this guy's rich.
man. I'm talking about going back to the tape days, Jimmy. I'm talking about having to plug in tapes and games. He said, you want to record something, put the tape in the TV and press record so it's on there. You watch it later. I remember being a little kid on might have been Halloween or something. I don't even know. We had these like the special ones that came in like the color at, like for the cartoons. I think it was like one was Charlie Brown, and he had like it was like an orange little tape that you could plug in for Halloween or whatever. I was like, man, but I just think it's so interesting how we continue to evolve, but in some ways, it's making it harder for everybody else. It comes back to the topic that we started with, right? All these different platforms that you have to watch different games, right? They obviously, if you like one sport, you probably like two sports. If you like two sports, you might like three sports, and all these different teams. Like I don't know about you, Jimmy, but my teams are very sporadic, right? And I think I told Chris this when I first got on the beat, and I was like, I feel scared doing this because I might get ostracized. But I mean, I'm from Maryland, right? So I'm not a Browns fan. I'm not a fan of anything. Also, because this is our job, right? So we can't really be fans and not be objective. But growing up, like my parents went to Texas for college, so I was a Texas fan, and then I liked Kobe Bryant, so I was a Lakers fan by proximity, not so because of the team or whatever. And like my dad and both of my mom is also from New York. So it was like, you gonna go there and see the family, and everybody's wearing Yankee stuff. So I'm like, it's a toss up to learning from all these different like fans that are wanting to watch their teams. We talked about Dave from Tucson, from our subtext, who's a Cavs fan but lives in Phoenix, and he gets blocked out because the home team wants you to watch their stuff, right? It's just like how difficult it is for a fan, not only at home, but especially if you're like not in your area, to watch these different things if you don't have all the streaming platforms. And the one complaint that I really saw on subtext was, well, I don't want to pay for cable and pay for the streaming service or pay for Amazon on top of that. And like that's very valid because you feel like you're giving your money to Direct TV. You feel like you're giving your money to Verizon, whatever you're watching it on. And now, okay, now I got to go get something else. And I feel like that's going to continue to happen. And that's the sustainability portion that you were talking about earlier. I mean, Amazon might be a little bit different because I feel like Amazon's going to be used for multiple different things in the future and has been around for a while. But what do you think about the situation, how it's changed, how it's growing, and how fans feel about having to get two different platforms?
Yeah, I think the point about not paying for cable and the streaming service X, Y, and Z is a good one because I think that's just a product of the time that we're living in. We're living in a really weird middle ground for TV, streaming service, movies, television, sports rights, all that stuff. Because we have the old guard, like we were talking about earlier, like these cable titans that are still trying to keep it pushing that way and get eyes to, Fox, ESPN's got the college football playoff for the next 10 years. So they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Monday Night Football is going to keep them afloat for a long time. But then we have these new people, the streaming services, Amazon, Apple TV, so on and so forth. Netflix is messing around with live comedy shows and they're doing these sort of like they're doing the Olympic whatever you want to call it, like they followed around the Olympic team this last year. They do the Drive to Survive with Formula One. That's becoming a defined niche for them. These people are coming in with deep pockets, and I think everyone's recognizing, like we said before, that like there's nothing. There are few things more lucrative in that business than a captive audience that's going to be like, you just feed them ads and they're like, yeah, I have to see what happens next after this commercial break because I'm locked in here. And there are a few things that bring that captive audience, like live sports. Like it's again, it's the only thing that we still have to sit and watch as a community. Everything else, your Game of Thrones, your House of Dragons, whatever, there's a time that it comes out, and they're even trying to, the HBO Maxes of the world are trying to condition us by dropping them one at a time to make that try to recreate that communal setting, I think. But you can still watch it Monday the next day with really no penalty to your viewing experience. That's just not the case with sports. So all these different entities are competing for sports rights right now, and we kind of just need to let it shake out. Unfortunately, I don't think there is a near future existence where we're going to be able to neatly watch everything under one umbrella. I think we are going to have to pick and choose. In some cases, you might have to pick and choose what you're just more interested in, right? Like, are you more of a football fan? Maybe that's where you're throwing your money. And maybe you care a little bit less about getting some of these NBA packages. And that's where, again, these regional packages become more enticing to us, right? Like I don't care about seeing your 27 nationally televised games a year. I don't care about whatever Prime is giving me with that. But if I can get just Cavs games, like it's kind of NBA League Pass does this. You can do a league-wide league pass, or you can pick one team, or you can buy certain games one at a time. Like that's a model that's interesting to me. If I can just, cut pieces of the cake for myself to make it a little bit easier for me to live in the world where we're so scatterbrained right now, that would be nice.
I completely agree, and that kind of touched on what I was saying with fans being fans of multiple sports, right? How like just hectic that lifestyle is, and try to be a fan and watch all your teams. Because man, Jimmy, we talk about fantasy football, dude. Like you're not even a fan of the team, but for the allotted period of the season, you're fans of 16 different guys, potentially on 16 different teams, right? and,
Well,
and you're
and sports gambling drives interest in a lot of these games too.
right. And we talk about being in an age where sports gambling is taking over, it is being so prominent and promoted and all these different things. You would think that they would make it easier, right, for our consumption, but that's just not the case at the moment. And like we talked about it at the beginning, it just makes me reminisce on a time where everybody had cable and we could just, hey, what's the game on? It's on ESPN. It's on Fox. It's on NBC. It's on what? Where is it at? Like, can I just? What's the channel number? Let me just type the channel number in, and it's already paid for. I mean, unless you you didn't have HD or whatever, then you had to go to a lower number and it gets smaller on your screen or whatever. But like that's like the only like get back that I remember of having on those back in the day. I mean, it feels like we're nearing a time where it's just getting so complicated. And you mentioned just how things are kind of shaping up, and it's just really interesting.
Dude, I remember being able to go to my friend's house and being able to use their TV. Like now I go over to someone's house and it's like, okay, maybe I could figure out a way to get this on. And then if I've used a Roku or something like that before and they have a smart TV, I can kind of figure my way around. But like you got weird volume buttons that are like on the side or underneath and all that sort of stuff. And of course every television or every entertainment center has like 3 different remotes now. It's like, oh yeah, this one's for our sound bar or our surround sound speakers, and this one's for the actual TV, and then this one's for our Roku or whatever smart TV, however you get your TV apps going. And it's just like, man, technology is great, But is it not a little bit? Is it not also a little bit freaking extra? Like, Shouldn't technology be simplifying the world and not giving us more headaches?
I miss like you said earlier in the podcast, like when we could show up in our mom and her dad or grandma, grandpa's house and be like, all right, well, the Wii's not working. I need to plug it in. Okay, put the red with the red, the yellow with the
Yeah, dude.
yellow. And they'd be like, how'd you do that? You should take up engineering. Now it's like, okay, I'm in the newer generation and I'm struggling trying to figure this out. And like, oh my goodness. It's just trying to figure out where we're at.
No one used to know more about my grandmother's television than I did. Now it's like, if somebody calls me, if a family member calls me, it's like, I don't know what your setup is. I'm not. You might be better off reading the manual in a different language than calling me.
I mean, bro, and you talk about going to a friend's house. Now you got to figure out which friends have what. Like, do you have it? Do you have Peacock? Can we go to your house? I don't care if you got a small couch. We'll figure it out. If you have Peacock, that's fine. We'll be over there to watch the Brazil game. Philadelphia Green Bay's coming on in an hour. I got to figure out how to watch it. Or like, these are the conversations that we're literally having.
Well, the other thing is they're starting to crack down now on these streaming services on like the shared passwords thing. Like for most of my life, I was just riding my parents' Netflix wave. Now it's a little trickier than that. Like you, and I think that's a thing widespread. Like think about families with kids in school, right, or kids in college. Like those kids don't have the money to be blown on Peacock and Netflix and all that stuff. And I don't know the nuts and bolts of how that works. How does if you're like you're like we were, if you're a sophomore in the dorms at Ohio University, and obviously there's a cable package in the dorms, but that's limited. How do you go about finessing the system to be able to share your parents' passwords anymore? I don't know.
I mean, Netflix just did everybody dirty when they did that. Netflix said they were like the first ones. They were like, okay, yeah, so that sharing stuff, that's dead. Y'all not doing that anymore. And you said sophomore year when we had the cable package that they wanted to help us out with or whatever, or you had the shared living areas where they had a TV. That's what I liked more. You could just go to the TV. Oh, y'all don't have this. Ohio University needs to step their game up because how you not gonna have the game on? Then you go to the apartments and you living by yourself. You get the big TV from the Walmart. You feeling good about yourself. Oh, I can't log into the Netflix. Oh, I can't get the game on. Oh, I don't know. Like, and because all of these different things, especially when like we talk about Netflix, just taking the passwords and be like, if you're not in the same location, you can't be on the same account. That was nasty work.
Or how about being a sports bar right now?
Oh
Like
my.
you got to that's got to be a huge chunk of your budget. You need six different streaming services to satisfy your customer base. Because if I guarantee, if someone walks in there, whether it's their first time or their 10th time, the one time you don't have the game, that's kind of the cardinal sin of sports bardom. You know what I mean? Like I can't imagine how much stress those people are going through.
Man, and it's hard to keep restaurants open, bars open as it is when it comes to 2020, the pandemic, all these other things. These people are hanging on by a thread. You say, all right, so you gotta have Peacock, you gotta have Netflix, you gotta like all these subscription services, and like we said, you can't just share the passwords from like somebody that might have had it from their house. Like it's gotta be stressful. Yeah, Jimmy. So I just think we're in a different era. I think it's for people that are gonna want to have cable and Amazon, or gonna have to do that to watch games. I understand their feelings about it, but I also understand like if people didn't have good experiences with Bally, because there will be some times where Bally wasn't airing games or what was blacked out or whatever. And being like, oh, Amazon is more reliable. I know I can watch anything on Amazon Prime right now if I have it. But I just think it's there's definitely two sides to it. Two things can be true, right, Jimmy? Two things can be true at the same time. And I think this is one of those situations. But all right. I think that is where we will wrap up today's podcast, talking about where we are in the streaming world and if streaming services are ruining what is the experience of watching sports games for just fans on a regular basis, right? So, Jimmy, any last thoughts before we head out?
I miss man caves. I miss cable boxes. I miss simplicity. That's it. That's all I got.
And with that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where we send polls that are exclusive to our subscribers, like the one when we talked about Amazon and Valley Sports. And you can get your opinions off and tell us how you feel about every situation. And especially when it comes to time for the season to roll around, Media Day is just in, 18 days? You're going to want to have this subscription package. So sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com /Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.